line 71. tae-young病. We have a tae-young illness. Okay. So, we must have some sort of change going on here because we've had all of these sequelas, we've had a little bit Shanghan, but all of a sudden he's giving us an illness. He's saying there's a tae-young illness. It's been a while since he's done that, right? Everything has been fa han ho, after a sweat, sequela of sweat, this has happened, that's happened, this is going on, it didn't get better. Now we're just saying, tae-young illness. The illness is in the tae-young. Fa han ho, post-sweating, or sequela from having sweated them. Da han chu, a great sweat is coming out. They're just pouring sweat, pouring sweat. Wei zhong gan, the stomach in the middle is dry. Fan zao, we have vexing and irritability. Bu de mian, they are unable to sleep, to rest. Yu de yin shui zhe, they wish to have water. Those who wish to have water. Okay? So let's stop here before I keep reading here, right? Because we've had a big sweat, and there's dryness in the middle, in the stomach. We've had this already. They've got fan zao. We now know we need to be careful. Could be yang deficiency, could be something. We also know we don't want to get too tied up in that. Sometimes cheng qi tang is what you need to give them. We have all this. They desire thirst. We want it. There we go. We got the thirst. We got the vexing. We got the irritability. We don't have a pulse, so we can't come out and say something that we need a Yang-Ming formula. But they've been pouring out sweat. We have to be very careful about depleting them further. The stomach is dry. They've got the vexing. They can't sleep. They wish for water. Shao shao yu yin zhe. Give them water in little bits. Just a little bit of water, little bit of water, little bit of water. Ling, leading the stomach qi to he, to become in harmony, right? That you don't have all those symptoms of what happens when the stomach is dry. Zi yu, and they'll get better. So here is, don't panic. Don't give them yang herbs. Don't give them cheng qi tang. Okay? You gave them the tae-young illness. They had a tae-young illness. You made them sweat, and they're pouring out the sweat. Too much came out. Okay? But don't panic. The symptoms are vexing. The stomach is there, but they can't sleep. The shen's disturbed. We're going to find out Wuling is really important when the shen is disturbed. But when the shen is disturbed because of a water issue, a yin issue, not a yang issue. But that's coming. So we've got all these things. Don't panic. Just give them water, and as they rehydrate, they'll be fine. This means this is the patient's the tae-young. We gave them the sweat, and now they've got like dry lips. They're really there, and they want to guzzle water. You can't let them guzzle water, or it's going to end up with another illness. Tingji, they're going to have the water that's stuck in them, and then we're going to have water stuck issues coming up. Or we're going to end up what's going to happen in the rest of the sentence. So we're still in line 71. So the first half says you give them water in little bits, and the stomach qi calms, and they'll get better. 若脉浮, if the pulse is floating, we know they still have the pernicious. Okay? Floating pulse, pernicious. 小便不利, difficult urination. 微热, they're slightly hot. Earlier we had hot, right? They didn't have cold, they had heat. This is slight heat, 小可者, and they have 小可, which we'll be defining for you in here, which is translated as wasting and thirsting. We had that today with the Jin-Huai. Yu, consider Wu Ling San as your principal formula. Use Wu Ling San as your principal formula. Okay, so we're about to hit a whole run of Wu Ling San. What's his commentary? Fa han yi jie. If we've sweat them and they've been relieved, wei zhong gan, the stomach is dry. It's a sequela from our sweating, but the pernicious was relieved. Fan zao, they have the vexing irritability. Bu de mian, they can't sleep. Yu yin shui zhe, they desire to drink. Shao shao yu zhe, we give them a bit of water. Wei qi de run, the stomach qi is given moistness or smoothness, that idea of flowing or slipperiness. Zi yu, and then it's better. All we had to do is moisten the stomach, and they're fine. Because we relieve the illness. That's just a sequela, there's some dryness. 若脉浮者, if the pulse is floating, 表为结也, then the surface has not been relieved. 饮水多而小便少者, those who drink lots of water but urinate only a small amount, 谓之小可, This is what is known as 小渴, wasting and thirsting. 里热身, if the inside heat is great or deep, 实也, this is excess or fullness. 微热, this is slight heat, 小渴者, those who have just slight heat with 小渴, wasting and thirsting, which is a bad translation. 热未成实, the heat has not yet turned solid, become excess. Right? It's in the in-between land. Remember earlier, we were using 厚朴 and 生姜 to get a qi before things got solid. 知识, 大黄. Okay? So here, it's not yet turned solid. That heat inside hasn't turned solid. 上焦燥也, the upper jiao is dry. Yu, Wu Ling San, we use Wu Ling San, 生津液, to engender or generate fluids, 和表里, to harmonize the surface and the inside. And so here we're going to get our heads around something. We're about to have a formula that has what everybody thinks is peeing herbs. Wuling, peeing herb. Zexie, everyone thinks is a peeing herb. Wuling, everyone thinks is a getting rid of edema herb. But the formula is going to engender fluids and relieve dryness in the upper jiao. Okay? Maybe it's the other herbs, right? Guizhi, acrid and hot. Baizhu, here he uses sweet and neutral. Okay? And he kind of, this is whatever's going on, whenever it's going on, the Baizhu has these slightly different things, and it's what it is. We can't change it, and we can't say it's wrong, we just have to recognize that there are discrepancies. So, this is our formula, Wu Ling San. Okay, so we have Wuling, and then all of a sudden it's 18 18 joules. I meant to get that piece of paper, I keep saying that. And the flavor is sweet and neutral. 自血, we're using 1 liang and 6 zhu, 6 zhu and a half. And the flavor is sour and salty for 自血. Okay? Wuling, we're using 18 zhu and it's sweet and neutral. We're using Guizhi and it's half a liang, it's acrid and hot. And then we're using Baizhu, which is 18 zhu and it's sweet and neutral. And we look at those amounts and we have to say, okay, this is, as Julianne said earlier, this is an entirely different measuring system. And why is it, and what's going on, and is that important? And you realize that he gathered all these different formulas. And so wherever this formula came from, that's what was recorded. He's not going to change it. He's not going to systematize it. He's not going to try and standardize all of his herbs in there. This is the ancients' recordings. And he says in his preface, if you haven't watched the preface, watch the preface. It's on our website. It's free. Go watch the preface of the Shanghan Lun. And he talks about, he cannot believe that the people of today do not deeply study the formulas of the ancients, their skills. And he said that he's not going to change anything. He's not going to think he's superior. He's not going to do anything like that. What was recorded is what he's going to include. Just as nobody dared change Zhongjing's words, Zhongjing was not about to dare change other people's words, right? There's a respect in their culture that didn't start to dissolve and people massage things until much later. Okay, we take our 5 herbs and we grind them to a powder. And then when we take it, we're going to mix it with what's called baiyin, or white beverage. And what is white beverage? White beverage is mitang, which is rice soup. And so what it is we're going to cook the rice, put a lot of liquid, and then we're going to drink the starchy water. Okay? So we're taking this powder with starchy water of the rice of the time, the jingmi, right? And we're going to mix it so that it says fang cun qi, so you have a mix of however strong it's going to be. You take it 3 times a day, as well as you drink lots of warm water all through the day. Okay? Han chu yu. And then when they sweat, they'll be better. So we have a formula. We know that if we look at our symptoms, we have a floating pulse, so we know we need to figure out how to get it rid of through the exterior. We're going to sweat that to do that, but we have to be careful not to sweat them too much because they've already got some light heat and they've got 小渴, which means I'm drinking lots but not peeing. Like, where the heck's the water going? Okay? So we got this kind of clear. So we know this formula is going to be used to treat an exterior condition that's got some heat and internal issues. Let's see what he has to say about the formula. 淡者, the bland flavor. Because remember, 5 flavors we all learn, and then there's a 6th, bland. But that doesn't help the numbers, right? 5 is a good number. Well, why are you going to mess that up? Okay? So 5 is good. And let's see what he says here. And this is a great explanation. 淡者, 一也. Bland. It is one. What does one mean? It means it's got no flavor. It's all flavor. It's nothing. It's just this one. There's nothing you can hook onto. It's 口入一, when one goes into the mouth, when the one flavor, the bland flavor goes into the mouth, 二味甘, it's perceived as sweet. 甘深, when something is very sweet, 二泛淡, it becomes bland to our taste. You might think, huh? All you have to do is be a normal American and eat the amount of sweets that are here, and then go cold turkey, and then eat a pie in a restaurant or something. It's inedible. And yet people can eat multiple whole pie, a whole thing of ice cream, a whole quart of ice cream. You go sugar-free for a while, and then you taste that ice cream. I mean, I go to the Hop, I can't eat their ice cream. It's just like, but it's become bland. I mean, isn't that incredible? This is what 900, some 100 years ago, and they're like, check this out. Really bland? You're like, sweet. Really sweet? No flavor at all. It's pretty cool, which is why bland falls under sweet, and therefore there's still 5 flavors. Love how they do that. But what a great explanation of all places to find your understanding of bland. Here it is, right there. 甘缓 are shen, are 淡深, sweet slows or calms, are, but 淡深, this bland flavor leaches. Okay? So it's going to be different. It falls into the sweet category, but it's going to leach or create flow. Not a big flow, it's a leach. It's a slow flow, right? Wuling, Baizhu, Wuling San Zhigan, the sweet of these 3 herbs, Wuling, Baizhu, which suddenly is sweet for him, and Wuling, 润虚 润虚燥而利津液. It moistens the deficient dryness and helps flow or benefits the fluids. 咸为下, 泻. Salty, that flavor goes down and disperses. That's that 泻 character. 味yin, it is a yin flavor. Okay, salty is in the yin flavors. So we have a yin flavored herb here. 自泻之咸, the saltiness of 自泻, 以泻覆水. It gets rid of the hidden or concealed water. 辛甘发散, acrid sweet, together they disperse or spread out. 味阳, this is yang. So we've got herbs that are going to bring down the yin, water, a yin, and here the bringing down the yin is not your good yin, it's pernicious yin. Pernicious yin is water. Water is a yin, okay? So the saltiness, the yinness of this flavor is going to be able to take care of the yin pernicious of water. And then the acridity, or the yangness of the guizhi, is going to be able to move the yang in the body. So we have yang herbs to help the yang good qi, and we have yin herbs to tackle the yin pernicious, not the true yin. Okay? So if you remember in the handouts, we got to make sure you get those handouts, that I talk about all the taiji symbols. And the hardest thing of the Shanghan Lun, in my opinion, is being able to keep clear when you're talking about the yin and yang of your pernicious and the yin and yang of your true qis. And when one is deficient, that often the other is in excess, and they'll switch in the middle of a sentence that they're assuming you got that you got an excess yin, they're talking about pernicious, damp, water, any of those things, or cold, and you've got deficient yang, talking about your true yang, right? And so they mix this really clearly in here. And so we've got this great description of these herbs. One of them, it's a yin herb, so it treats a yin pathogen. The other one's a yang herb, so it treats the true yang. Love that. Okay. So now what we need to do with ourselves is we need to back up and start thinking about this idea that we have what we thought would be herbs that would create dryness in the body. You're going to make them Wuling, Zexie, and Wuling. Okay? Everyone thinks edema, 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 and that's not the case. We're actually going to be getting rid of blockages, and therefore the yin fluids can move around the body, the yang can move around the body. These herbs get rid of pernicious water. And when the water is removed, the yin is benefited, the yang is benefited. But it's yin that gets most benefited. And we'll start to look at that in a second. But I want to pause here for a second and look at one of the characters. And it says, the saltiness of Zexie, it gets rid of, or it expels the concealed, fu, that fu character, hidden, concealed, shui, the concealed water. Okay? Then we have to remember that this person has 小渴. They're drinking a ton, they're thirsty, they're not peeing. So where's the water going? It's going somewhere. It's not coming out in the sweat, it's not coming out in the pee, and yet they're thirsty. We're going to relieve the thirst by having them pee. Wu Ling San. Okay? So the first thing I want to touch upon is this fu, this hidden water. And this fu character, someone actually had the audacity to say in a thing, I'm hearing this secondhand, so I probably have the story wrong, but the audacity to say, well, do you think there really is such thing as a latent pathogen? Latent. And of course, it's all silly conversation unless you can find what word they're talking about in Chinese and in what reference and then what it means. But the latent pathogen they're talking about is this fu character. And this fu character shows up in the Neijing. So to come out and say that there's no such thing as a latent pathogen is the same thing as coming out and saying that the Neijing is wrong. Like you don't need to follow that, which is really silly. And this idea of latent heat, latent water, latent anything, or this fu, it's in there. It's concealed. It never got all the way clean. And so you have all that heat or things that didn't get passed out in the winter show up in the spring illnesses. That's where in the Neijing that whole talks about how the illnesses of the season are things that are hidden from the season before, that are coming through. And so we have this idea of we have this illness, and if we're not careful, someone's got thirst, and they've got all of these things, a little bit of heat. What's going to be in there? Well, we're going to put Tianhua in there. Right? We want to moisten some yin. We might put in some zhimu. Let's see if we can make some more yin, save the heat from the yin. Maybe some lugun. We're trying to figure out, we're going to be throwing every yin thing at it because we want to fix their thirst. Okay? And he's saying, be careful. There's hidden water. They want water, and there's hidden water, and it's that hidden water that's creating the havoc. Now let's take a moment. I'm trying mostly to stick to Cheng Wuji's commentaries, because as I've said before, when we get through this, I'm going to do the Shanghan and then probably the Jinghui, or maybe skip the Jinghui and go to the Neijing, the Nanjing. But when the circle comes all the way around again, I'm going to redo the Shanghan Lun. And I'm going to do Chen Xiuyuan's commentary. The last, in my opinion, great commentary. So you have the first, and you have to start at the first, because even though Chen Xiuyuan's commentary is the best commentary on the planet flat out for the Shanghan and the Jinghui, he's assuming you've read this. And so without this behind you, then a lot of Chen Xiuyuan's commentaries won't make sense, especially when he's critical of what's being said that everyone's been following. The same way the Tao Te Ching is so critical to understanding the Neijing, which is why we're doing the Tao Te Ching before the Neijing. Okay, but let's look at what Chen Shenwu, so he was this person in the 1900s, and he's got some great commentaries about this idea. And then let me see if I can find some fun things for you here. We're going to look at this and his commentaries, or his explanation, And you'll start seeing some more modern, I don't want to use the word Western language, but Western concept language going in there, is you have a tae-young illness, and after they've been sweated, they've been this sequela, and then there are two circumstances that can happen. 有仅有两种变化. There's two types of things that can happen that are mentioned in this paragraph. One is that the stomach simply is dry. There's no other complications. Between the illness and the treatment, they've got dryness in the middle, in the stomach. And it's because of the great sweat coming out. The symptoms are gone of the surface symptoms, so the pulse is not floating. They're not stiff in the neck. They're not afraid of wind. They're not afraid of cold. They don't have any of those opening line statements of the tae-young illness. tae-young 这位病，脉浮头项僵痛而无寒, right? The things. For the tae-young to be illness, there has to be stiffness in the neck. The pulse has to be floating, and there has to be a fear of cold. And then there's the hoi fa, all this. In any case, all those beginning lines that I did for you guys. So, because of this, the too much sweating, there's not enough fluids, and so there's dryness. And because of the dryness, the dryness is leading to the vexing. It's not the lack of yang, as we had earlier. And then because of this vexing, they can't sleep. So there's vexing in there. And this is the famous sentence. There's a very famous sentence in Chinese, which is 胃不和,卧不安, or 夜不安, depending on how you translate it. But when the stomach is not in harmony, lying down is not peaceful. And if you want to know what that feels like, eat a really big meal at night and then lie down. Or like Thanksgiving dinner and then try and have a good night's sleep. It's not possible. Your stomach's just like, caw, caw, caw. I mean, it's way too busy in there, and you put so much in there that it can't actually move it through. Dryness, overfullness of food, or dryness leads to agitation in the stomach, and then you don't sleep well. So, I mean, it's common. Like, pretty much everybody in China will be like, oh, 胃不和,卧不安, like stomach's not in harmony, and therefore the sleep is not calm. So, 自证饮水, all you have to do is give them water, and it'll be relieved. And all it is the dryness, that you give them a little bit of water, you give it to them, and they're fine. If you give it to them too much, however, then you can end up with an illness if you give them water too quickly, because they're weak. The stomach is dry but weak, and then you end up with stuck water, and then you need some of the Wuling things, or you end up with the kidney qi moving, and then you have all that. So you got to go slow. So you've got to be very gentle. The second thing is the stomach has water, and the problem is that even though the symptoms may have been relieved, they still have a floating pulse, and water is not going down, because we know this from their not urinating. Water is stuck, and it's not transforming into fluids. So we have to realize it's not enough to have water. The water is going to be transformed into something the body likes. Okay, water by itself, it's not like add water, that's your Jin-Huai. Your Jin-Huai is your body fluids. So because the water is not going in, the fluids are not being engendered, because the water is blocking the path of flow, and therefore engenderment cannot happen. That's the mechanism. 子, 咽干, they have dryness in the throat. You can look for dryness in the mouth. You can look for zao, irritability, and dryness, and thirst. They have mild heat, slight heat. And this is important to differentiate, because if we're not careful, we're going to want to give them bai hu tang, white tiger decoction. Yin shui ru wei bu hua. This is water going in and not transforming, and the urine is not able to come out, and thus they desire water because their fluids are not being made. So they keep more water. Water gets stuck. Fluids still aren't being made. What's their solution? Add more water. Water's still stuck. Fluid, so they're drinking, but they're not actually processing the water, so it's not making the fluids. Okay? And this creates what's called 小咳. That which is called 小咳. And the primary treatment method is Wu Ling San, because it's going to clear heat, and it's going to clear the body of stuck water. And so by getting rid of stuck water, we engender yin. So the next thing I want to point out is we know there's something on the surface, and so now we suddenly need to look at this and think, do we once again have a Guizhi or Ma Huang variation in our slide game? Okay? And we have 5 herbs. So first thing we think of is Guizhi. Okay, they like the numbers. They do this. They really do. But we look at it, and we've got Guizhi, all right, but we don't have Shaoyao. Well, we have Baizhu. Okay, we're using the Baizhu to process a little bit, and then instead of Shengjiang, Dazao, and Gansao to help the middle and engender things, we need to clear stuck water. And so our three herbs are three herbs to drain water. So when you read Bensky, and this is where I'm going with this, when you read Bensky and it says Wuling treats, I should have brought the book down, but it says something like it can treat external pathogens or it relieves the surface. I think it says Wuling relieves the surface. And if you look at Baizhu, it's got its list of functions and relieves the surface. Where's it coming from? It's coming from the use of Wuling and Baizhu in the tae-young chapter to relieve illnesses on the surface. But remember, they're listing all the things it can do. It doesn't mean it does it in every circumstance. It's only going to do it in this circumstance. Another circumstance would be the wrong herb. Okay? It doesn't just relieve the surface. It's going to drain stuck water, allow qi to move, and it's the Guizhi that's going to actually be doing it. But that's how those functions got listed. And Bensky doesn't make it up, right? He was translating the most common books, relying heavily on the teaching texts. And, you know, bless him, as he said, he used, when there's a discrepancy, he uses the most common. And unfortunately, I think we've already said this before, you look like one book published in the time of the Yellow Emperor. Well, actually three, but we've lost two. Okay, there was the Neijing is the internal, there's the external that was lost, and there's supposed to be a Qibo's massage book or hand technique book that's lost. So you have that. Then you've got Shanghan that's got broken into Jin-Huai and some other writings. Then you get the Tang, you get a few more writings. Then you keep going, and then everybody who wants to get famous in contemporary times has to write a book. So if you were to go by whoever the most, like, Wuling is this flavor in 70 books, you have to look how many of those 70 were copying someone's information, so it's actually the same book, and how many were in the last 70 years or 100 years. And then you realize it's very skewed. I mean, it's a big problem. So, any case, first thing I want to touch here is that Wuling, Zhuling, all of these herbs, they're getting rid of pernicious yin water so fluids can be engendered. The next thing is you look at Wuling and it says calms the shun. Okay? And Wuling, it calms the shun. And you get somebody who comes in and they're a little depressed or they're a little agitated and you think, Wuling calms the shun, and you start throwing it in. Now, if you need to calm the shun a bit more, use Fu Shun. It says it right in the book, right? Like, Fu Shun has a stronger calming effect. Wuling does not calm the shun. Okay? Excess heart-yang issues. Okay? You're going to need to give them a purgative, a big one, and drain it. But when it's the yin of the heart that's going on, you have fluid accumulation. Fluid accumulation leads to vexing, agitation, weakness. Remove the pernicious water, the heart is calmed because there's no irritant, and so it's calmed the shun. But it's a very specific situation. Here we are looking at these things. We've had Wuling earlier when we had 175 grams of Wuling because our symptoms were running piglet. Okay? And so running piglet will really disturb the shun. Okay? The person's like, I mean, can I say this? Well, never mind. I don't know if we've ever said who actually the patient was who had the running piglet syndrome that I had to chase around my own house. Should be giveaway, right? But it was crazy. I mean, I had to pin that patient between the wall and the refrigerator and use kung fu to like pin them to the floor and give them the treatment. It's pretty crazy. Running piglet is no joke. And Wuling is your herb. Wuling doesn't calm the shun. It doesn't go and be like, running piglet, it's okay. It's all right. We're going to calm the shun. No, it's like, and it's getting rid of the pernicious stuck. The kidney qi in the water. Okay? That's how Wuling does these things. And then you start thinking, Sijin Zatang, Wuling, and then all of a sudden we're thinking like Wuling is the primary tonify yang herb. Like Wuling, then throw it in for the spleen herb. Someone's weak. And are we actually perhaps slowing down the progress of our patients because we're missing the fact that this gets rid of pernicious water, which is creating a harassment in the system, as opposed to tonifying the spleen. It's not like a drain damp herb, like the person's got a damp and so you throw it in there. If that damp is not like up there and there's a heart kidney issue, it's not going to be so effective. Wu Ling San, we have a powder that's being used. We have strange amounts, sort of reinforcing the idea this was coming from a different place, different time, different old book. So they were using a powder. They're taking it with ease. And the final thing that I want to point out, this Wu Ling San, this first one, we have to point out a lot of things. I talked about how this is a Guizhi variation, and that you can see that. So the question is, what is Guizhi? And of course, now everyone knows that the answer is not Guizhi, Shaoyao, Shengjiang, Dazao, Gancao. It is Guizhi, Shaoyao, Shengjiang, Dazao, Gancao, hot bowl of joe, and a blanket. Okay? Otherwise, it's not Guizhi. You don't take the joe and you don't pick the blanket, you won't have the mild sweat and you won't get better. We had somebody in the seminar last week who's taking this, and he was so excited, right? He said, my spouse had all the symptoms, and so I gave them the doses that you're talking about, and then I made the porridge and I put them under a blanket, and the next morning she had a little sweat, and the next morning she was perfectly fine. I was just like, oh, look, it works. If you use it the way it's supposed to be. I mean, he wrote it that way. I mean, you want to go off label, that's your business, but don't blame him is all I got to say. So here we are. Is this there? What do we have here? We have rice water. Okay? We're getting some sweet. We're getting some stickiness. We're getting that liquid in there, and then we're pumping them with hot water. We're not covering in a blanket, but we're pumping them with hot water. And so why are we not covering them in a blanket? Right? Why has that been changed? Because they're not afraid of wind or cold. They've got mild heat. You're going to put a mild heat person under a blanket? They're going to be like, no, thank you. Or they'll break too big of a sweat because they've already got the heat. And so your herbs plus the Guizhi plus the thicker water. But no, he didn't say Joe. He doesn't want the Joe. He doesn't want that weight to this formula. If you put in the Joe, the body digests. These herbs, Wuling, Zixie, and Fuling, won't drain the pernicious water because there's food in the way. There's actual rice porridge, which means, ergo, if you have any draining formulas and the person takes it after a meal because you're worried it's going to hurt their stomach, it's not going to do the job because there's a bunch of stuff in the way. Right? Just from one formula, we start seeing all of these things. It's like, common sense that we just have to wake up to. That's the point of the Shanghan-Lun, waking up to the common sense. So we have that. And instead of covering with a blanket, we just keep warm water in. Warm water in. And hopefully the warm water, along with the strength of the rice water that doesn't have food in it. There's no food. It's all the liquid that's going to be enough to pop the sweat. They get the sweat. The doors are going to open. They'll be able to urinate. They'll be able to sweat. The waters are moving. Pernicious water is gone. The fluids engender. Life is good. Wuling San.
Right on.
How's that for a ride, huh?